Imagine my shock when I realized I had the power to shift into a wolf. A secret I've kept hidden for years. Chapter 23. Dancing with the enemy. Adam was gone the next morning when I woke up. I rolled over and put my hand on his empty pillow inside. I knew I needed to talk to Mrs. Chandler so I could convince her to let me out of the promise. Adam was short with me the night before when he came out of the bathroom and got into the bed. I knew he was frustrated, probably not as much as I was, but still. Frustrated nonetheless. I was torn between feeling guilty for making the promise and feeling guilty for wanting to break it. I got out of the bed, noticing by the clock that it was still in the early morning. After showering, I changed into warm clothes and left the bedroom to find Mrs. Chandler. I tried to ignore the stares I received from the guards that were still lining Adam's hallway as I made my way to the stairs. The castle was quieter than I had ever heard it. Despite there being over 100 guests roaming around, Liu had told me that the meeting started early in the morning. Then they took a break for lunch, and resumed again until evening. She also told me that all the maids, servants, and other workers were strictly forbidden to venture anywhere near the offices during the meeting times. She said the offices had been closed for the week to ensure no one was going to be anywhere near the alpha superiors, their betas, and the other advisors and council that would be attending the meetings as well. I could only hope that some of the tensions would die down and the ball that night wouldn't be as awkward as the gala had been the night before. Mrs. Chandler wasn't in her room when I went looking for her there. The twins were still asleep, as was Vega. However, I only assumed that Vega was because her door was closed. I ventured a little farther and went to the hospital ward where I found Mrs. Chandler sitting next to Mr. Chandler, who was sleeping, as she read a book. I knocked on the door gently and she looked up from the pages to see me standing there. She smiled warmly, but she looked tired. "Have you eaten breakfast yet?" She shook her head. "No, but I'm fine. You need to eat. 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐸𝐵 𝐻𝐸𝐺𝐸𝐬𝐭. Holding my hand out for her to take, Mrs. Chandler hesitated, looking between Mr. Chandler and my outstretched hand. "There's coffee upstairs." She smiled and stood up, placing her book down on the chair. "Coffee sounds great right about now." I smiled as I hooked my arm with hers and leered her out of the room. I passed a nurse in the hallway and informed her Mrs. Chandler and I would be getting breakfast if she needed anything. It's about time she left that room and took care of herself. The nurse joked. I smiled and Mrs. Chandler and I left the ward and walked to the dining room. As we sat down, a woman came out and asked us what we wanted to eat and disappeared into the kitchen when she had our answers. "So, how are you?" she asked me. "I should be asking you." I laughed. "How was Mr. Chandler?" She smiled, but it appeared as if she was trying not to burst into tears. "He's doing okay." I knew she was lying, but I couldn't stand to see that woman cry, so I didn't push it any farther. "Are the boys enjoying themselves?" I asked her, changing subjects. Mrs. Chandler laughed at this. "Yes, they think this is the best place in the world to be. Ethan has all times if we could throw their birthday party here. Apparently, there's a basketball court downstairs. I had forgotten their birthday was in the upcoming week." My eyes widened as I realized my birthday was the week after that. They could totally have their party here. 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐬𝐭. Trying not to think about my birthday. I could have a cake made and we could celebrate. "That's very sweet of you, Evelyn, but you and Adam have done enough for us already. I can't ask you to do this." I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. "I want to do this," I said sincerely. "Adam and I are not keeping score here. How many times did you make me a cake on my birthday? This is the very least I can do." She smiled and nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Evelyn. I'm very grateful. Please don't cry. 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐬𝐭. getting out of my seat and wrapping my arms around her. "I'm not," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. I laughed at this, despite knowing she was only crying because of the weight that was on her shoulders. I couldn't imagine how stressed she was or how worried. "It's going to be okay," I whispered. She sniffled. "I know, sweetheart. I know." I sat back down in my chair, trying not to cry myself. As two women came out with our food, my mouth watered when my eyes caught a glimpse of the steaming cups of coffee they brought in as well. We began to eat, and Mrs. Chandler raved about how delicious the food was. I agreed with her, but I honestly couldn't eat much because of the way my stomach had tied itself in knots. "What's wrong?" 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she asked me. There was no hiding anything from this woman. I took a deep breath and placed my fork down on my plate. "Do you remember the promise I made when I was 14? I asked her. She smiled. "I do. The conditions of the promise have kind of changed. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "How do you mean?" she asked me. "I have a mate," I explained. "Shouldn't he count as a husband?" Mrs. Chandler nodded thoughtfully. "Do you love him?" she asked me. I swallowed hard. "What? Do you love him?" she repeated. I couldn't answer her. "I mean, he's my mate," I said finally. Mrs. Chandler smiled faintly hearing me say this. "Finding your mate and falling in love with him at a very different points in time." She noticed the confused look on my face and continued. "You were given a mate by fate. But fate cannot make you love him. Only you can. Loving that man is a choice. It doesn't happen when the moon goes through its phases. It happens because you choose to love him. It's a choice you'll have to make every day for the rest of your life." She reached across the table and took my hand in hers. "That is why I asked you to wait for marriage. Because marriage is a vow to love and cherish forever. Tell me, do you love Adam even when he becomes jealous? Do you love him when he is angry? How about if he were hurt? Would you love him even if he were not an alpha?" I didn't answer her. "That is marriage. That man downstairs lying in that hospital bed is my husband. I choose to love that man. I made vows to love him even when he is sick. That is love. Darling." She reached up and touched my cheek. "You are a grown woman. You've made better choices than my Vega has. Even though you've slept beside that man every night for weeks now. You're smart, but you're not ready. Your body might be, but you are not. Once you truly love that man, you will be." "How do you know when you love someone?" I asked her. She smiled, no doubt thinking of Mr. Chandler. "You don't at first. But one day you'll tell someone you love him by accident. Or you'll think it to yourself when he says something funny. Then, it will hit you like a ton of bricks. You'll know it when it happens." I groaned. "It's so hard to wait." She smiled at this and took a sip of her coffee. "I promise it will be worth it." After my chat with Mrs. Chandler, I wasn't so convinced that the promise was a bad thing. I was, however, stuck with one lingering thought. Do I love Adam? I didn't have an answer, which solidified Mrs. Chandler's point further. I made my way to find you after I walked Mrs. Chandler back to the hospital ward. I found her pouring Victoria's tea in one of the many sitting rooms. "Can I talk to you?" I asked her. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, while Victoria just glared. She set the teapot down and rushed out of the room to meet me in the hallway. "I'm so glad you're here," she said excitingly. "My brain has been frying itself pouring her tea all day. I kind of wish we could come up with some more planning to do, just so I wouldn't have to." I laughed. It was a shame that someone like you wasted away her days pouring tea. "I need your help tomorrow. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐬 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Anything. I need to put together a birthday party for the Chandler twins," I explained. "I was wondering if you'd like to help." She nodded. "I'd love to. Thank you." I smiled, Miss. 𝐊𝐢. Victoria called to her. She rolled her eyes. I'll see you later. She turned and went back into the sitting room, and I left, making my way upstairs. I had nothing to do, so I thought I would pay 𝐊𝐢 a visit. I found him in a library, his nose buried in a book. Don't mind me, I said as I walked into the sitting room where he was. I'm just going to find a book. He nodded and smiled. Help yourself to any which one you like. I found a Jane Austen book hidden amongst the countless spines of history and non-fiction literature that 𝐊𝐢 had on the bottom shelves. Sitting down on the couch across from him, I opened the book and began to read. A few hours went by and I felt myself start to doze off. Despite the countless cups of tea that 𝐊𝐢 had brought me, I finally put the book down and stood up, stretching my stiff joints. Would you mind if I took this to finish later? I asked him. 𝐊𝐢 had resumed his reading position in the high, back chair in front of me. He looked up at me, smiled warmly, and nodded. Thanks. I promise I'll bring it back. He winked. I know where to find you if you don't. I laughed as I left the room and then left the library, walking downstairs to Adam's room. Once there, I picked out my dress for the night and laid down on the bed. With nothing else to do, I felt myself getting sleep-𝐸 and sleep-𝐸 and soon dozed off. I awoke a short time later to the sound of a slamming door. I sat up in the bed quickly and saw Adam walking in. He cursed under his breath when he saw me. Sorry, I didn't realize you were sleeping. 𝐊𝐢 𝐷𝐸. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. 𝐊𝐢. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Rubbing my eyes. How did your meetings go? Unproductive, he answered shortly, taking off his tie and walking into the bathroom. 𝐊𝐢. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Is he still in a bad mood? My question was answered as each of us got ready for the ball. Neither of us speaking. He only spoke when he told me I looked pretty in my dress as we walked out the door to leave. It was a fitted, halter, neck mermaid gown with an open back and intricate silver beading all over. I had pulled my hair up and put on the diamond earrings Adam had given me the night before. He, however, seemed much more occupied with the time than how I looked. Adam ushered me out of the room quickly and we made our way downstairs to the ballroom where people were already dancing. I expected him to ask me to dance, but he excused himself to go talk to 𝐿𝐲 and left me standing there. Alone, I stood there awkwardly for a few moments, annoyed with Adam for leaving me, before Diedrich, the European Alpha's son, walked up. I swallowed a knot in my throat as he approached me. Good evening. I nodded. Good evening. His piercing blue eyes studied me. You look fantastic. Thank you. I stuttered out anxiously. Adam, why are you not here right now? Would you like to dance? I felt my face growing red. I can't dance. 𝐿𝐢. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Laughing nervously. I'll teach you. He held out his hand and I felt myself get more and more flustered with each second passing. No, really, it's fine. 𝐿𝐢. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Trying to brush him off, he smiled and took my hand and pulled me out to where people were dancing. I didn't really want to dance with him, but I wasn't about to dig my heels into the wood flooring and cause a scene. He lifted my left hand up to rest just below his bicep and held my right hand in his, before slipping his other hand to rest on my back, just beneath my shoulder blade. If it weren't for my heels, I wouldn't have been able to dance with him properly because of how tall he was. He lowered his hand down to my waist to accommodate the height difference as well. As we began to waltz, somehow my feet fell into a rhythm that mirrored his. Despite my clumsy nature, I thought you'd never danced before, he commented. I haven't. 𝐿𝐢. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Blushing, I noticed that everyone was moving in a counter-clockwise circle as they danced. Because of the constant turning, I wasn't able to see Adam anywhere, looking for someone. My mate, I make you uncomfortable. Do you not like the way I dance? You're a fantastic dancer. 𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐸. Ignoring the first question, he hummed in response, not taking his eyes off of mine. Soon, the awkwardness began to wear off. I began to actually enjoy dancing. Despite my partner, I heard someone clear their throat and I looked over to see Jace standing next to us. My turn. Smiling at me, 𝐸𝐳𝐸 stopped dancing and handed my hand to Jace before winking at me and walking away. Jace took my hand and began to dance with me. He wasn't near as great of a dancer as 𝐸𝐳𝐸 was and I was slightly frustrated by it. Tell me why Adam sent me over to stop him instead of coming over himself, Jace asked suddenly. My eyes widened. He did. Jace nodded. Why, I sighed. I'm not sure I can tell you. Is he upset with you? I nodded slightly. Why, he asked me. I can't tell you that. It was his turn to sigh. Why was Adam being so distant? Why couldn't he just understand that I had a promise to keep instead of just pouting about it? I pulled away from Jace as I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I'll be right back. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸. Walking away from him, I made my way through the crowds and into the hallway. I was looking for the bathroom when I saw them. Tyler was standing in the hallway talking to the German Alpha Superior. My eyes widened. I could only imagine what they were talking about. How much did Tyler know? Had he been faking his obliviences this whole time? Did he know about Europe? Tyler stopped talking when he saw me and guilt flashed over his face. Oh no. Chapter 24 Denying Rejection. I was shocked. I knew what Tyler had been sent by the Europeans to do. I just never thought he would actually do it. Jace had followed me out of the ballroom, I assumed, because he felt guilty about prying to Adam and I's relationship, and he growled when he laid eyes on Tyler and the Alpha Superior. Immediately, I saw Tyler's face turn pale at the sight of Jace. The German Alpha Superior looked over to Jace and I. Is there a problem? You tell me, Jace said. No. No problem here. Beta Superior Eaton. Tyler stuttered out. Damn, he really was scared of Jace. I couldn't read the Alpha Superior's face. Did he know? Did he not know? Tyler, could you leave us for a moment? Tyler swallowed hard and walked the long way around Jace to go back into the ballroom. You as well. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience and enthusiasm. His eyes narrowed at me as I said this, throwing a suspicious glance at both myself and the German Alpha. He turned around slowly and left us standing in the hallway. My heart was beating 1,000 miles a minute as I approached the Alpha Superior with my hand outstretched. I haven't had the chance to introduce myself. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience and enthusiasm. My name is Evelyn Schubert. He took my hand in his and kissed the top of it. A German name. He commented, My name is Alpha Superior Ludwig Schneider. It is a pleasure to meet you. Although he was sweet, talking me, his eyes were showing a man who was entirely too bored with this conversation. The pleasure is all mine. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience and enthusiasm. Faking sincerity. I'd like to apologize for Tyler. He's known for being a bit long-winded at times. He smiled politely. It's quite all right. Evelyn. We'd only been speaking for a moment. I hummed in response. Well, I'm sure you'd like to get back to the ball. Smiling. Allow me to walk with you. This man cannot be wandering the halls unaccompanied. I don't trust him. He nodded and offered his arm. Sliding my hand to rest on the inside of his arm, I began to walk with him back down the hallway and into the ballroom. Tell me, 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸 𝐿𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐬𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧. I've met 𝐷𝐸𝐸𝐿, but I'm afraid I don't know your youngest son's name. I was lying, obviously. However, the awkward tension was too great to be walking in silence. Oh, that would be Barrett. I can introduce you, if you'd like. I faked a smile. That would be lovely. Upon entering the ballroom, 𝐿𝐢𝐻 and I were met by Adam and Jace. Darling, Adam said. I was just looking for you. Oh, I said. I've just introduced myself to 𝐿𝐻𝐻. Jace raised an eyebrow at this. I see that, Adam said. I could tell he was putting on a show. His voice was more professional and more polished now than it normally was. Your mate is lovely, 𝐿𝐻 said. I saw disgust flash across Adam's face. Indeed, Adam said. He turned his attention to me. Darling, I've yet to get my waltz this evening. Oh, I said, narrowing my eyes at him. I suppose I've been too busy dancing with 𝐷𝐸𝐸 and Jace. I thought I saw 𝐿𝐻𝐻 smile out of the corner of my eye. My turn, Adam said, holding out his hand. I could tell his patience was running thin. He was over the act. It was lovely to meet you. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐻. 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. Smiling at 𝐿𝐻𝐻. You as well, Evelyn. Kissing my hand, I took Adam's outstretched hand and he led me away, towards the dance floor. What the hell were you thinking? He growled under his breath. I saved your ass, I said angrily. You're lucky I got to him before Tyler had the chance to say anything else. Jace would have intervened if you had not. Faking a smile at someone as we passed them. Jace was too busy dancing with me because you weren't man enough to do it yourself. I quipped. I am not a man. Adam growled, pulling me into his chest as we began to dance. His eyes were angry as I looked up at him. I am something so much more that you do not want to play games with. He continued. My jaw tightened as I looked away. I'm merely playing the game you started. I snapped. Evelyn, don't. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐻. 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻. Turning to look at him again, his jaw clenched. We danced for a few more agonizing minutes before the music stalled, signaling it was time to eat. Everyone stopped dancing and applauded for the orchestra before making their way from the ballroom into the grand lobby where the tables were set up for dinner. Once everyone was seated, dinner was served. Across from Adam and I sat the Germans. 𝐿𝐻𝐻 sat beside an older man who was stout and had balding brown hair. I assumed he was the beta superior. Directly in front of me sat 𝐷𝐸𝐸𝐿, whose eyes never left me during we were sitting at the table. I would look up at him periodically and his eyes would meet mine, causing me to look away. The candles we ate under caused shadows to be cast his face, making him look enchantingly lethal. I was drawn to that man and I felt incredibly guilty for it, seeing as I was sitting right beside my mate. Adam didn't speak to me throughout the rest of the evening. We retired to his room earlier than we had the night before. Without a word, I stepped out of my dress, and doing my own buttons that time, and went into the bathroom to shower. Stepping under the hot stream of water was the most refreshing feeling I'd had in a long time. I slowly began to feel my muscles relax and my headache disappear. I'm not sure how long I stood in the shower, but it felt like hours. I washed my hair and scrubbed my skin with soap until it was smoother than it had been in a while. I didn't want to leave the bathroom and walk out into a bedroom where I would be met by the silent treatment. I finally turned the shower off and put my hair in a towel and wrapped another towel around my torso. I walked out of the bathroom to see Adam already in bed. Admittedly out of pettiness, I put on the black underwear I knew he liked and one of his t-shirts. After drying my hair and brushing it out, I turned out the lights and got into the bed beside him. A few minutes went by and I sighed, trying to fall asleep. His voice cutting through the silence caught me off guard. What? I'm sorry, he repeated, for sending Jace to you instead of going myself. I wasn't sure if I went that I would be able to control myself, and I knew snapping that German's neck wouldn't do much for diplomacy's sake. Is that all you're sorry for? I asked, bitterly. Does he not realize how he acted before that? I'm also sorry for not respecting your decision to wait until our wedding night. Adam added. Patience isn't one of my strong suits, and I can't help but feeling rejected by the decision. So I suppose that's why I got angry. I rolled over to face him. The moonlight streaming in from the window hit his face and made his blue eyes look like they were glowing. I don't want you to feel rejected. He didn't say anything. I'm not rejecting you. I repeated. I want you as much as you want me. But I have to honor my word. Don't say that. My eyebrows furrowed. Don't say what? That you want me as much as I want you. But it's true. He shook his head. If you knew how much I wanted you, you wouldn't want to sleep next to me. I gulped, and Adam turned over to face away from me. I was quiet for a few moments, unsure of what else to say. Then don't say anything. I grabbed his bicep and rolled him back over on his back. I knew I surprised him when I lifted my leg over his waist to straddle him, but I didn't care. I leaned down and kissed his lips as hard as I could. Adam wasted no time in kissing me back, and soon I found myself flipped over on my back with Adam hovering above me. My hands tugged at the hair at the nape of his neck as the kiss deepened. Any thought of 𝐷𝐸𝐺 had disappeared shortly thereafter, along with my shirt, as his lips left mine and trailed down my stomach. I regretted even letting that German boy get close to me. I awoke the next morning to an empty bed. It was late. I had no doubt that Adam had left our first meetings of the day. I rolled over and the sheet slipped off my bare shoulders. I shivered at the cold breeze. I sat up, holding the covers to my chest, and looked at the clock. A note's there, leaning against it. I reached out from the sheer curtain and grabbed it. Meet me for lunch. I read the clock and my eyes widened. I only had 10 minutes to get ready. I shot out of the bed, tripping over the tangled sheets. I went into the bathroom and began to brush my teeth. I gasped in horror seeing the love bites all over my stomach. I quickly checked my neck and side, thankful Adam hadn't left any more in any noticeable places. My mind immediately flashed back to the night before. My promise was still intact, but it came close to breaking that night. After a few minutes of heated kisses and wandering hands and mouths, we both decided to stop. It wasn't an easy decision for either of us. However, I was content now knowing that Adam was certain I wasn't rejecting him by deciding to keep my promise to Mrs. Chandler. I changed after brushing my hair and teeth and was out the bedroom door in no time. I made my way down the stairs into Adam's office. There were guards everywhere, but no one tried to stop me as I ventured into his office. I ran into 𝐷𝐸𝐺, who was leaving the office. As I entered, I coughed awkwardly and made my way swiftly into the room where Adam sat behind his desk. Hey, he looked up at me and smiled, amusement dancing in his eyes. Good morning, sunshine. Ready for lunch? I rolled my eyes. He could tell I had only just woken up. Yes, I answered, causing him to laugh. He stood up out of his chair and came around his desk when I noticed something odd. Why are you wearing a tie? Adam normally wore his dress shirts with the first button and his sleeves rolled up. That day, however, he had a tie on and his sleeves were cuffed at his wrist. He wordlessly made his way over to where I stood and began to loosen his tie. He undid the first button and pulled his collar to the side. I gasped once I saw the hickey that was just above his collarbone. I felt like a teenager trying to hide it this morning. I laughed, feeling my cheeks heat up. I lifted my shirt and showed him my torso, which was littered in love bites. He laughed. I guess I got a little carried away. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 𝐷𝐸𝐺𝐿𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Taking note of the number of them, I wish I could say I was sorry. I laughed and shook my head, pulling my shirt back down. I've only got a few minutes for lunch, Adam said. Would you like to go ahead and eat? I nodded as he took my hand and led me out of the office. We walked over to the dining room and talked as we ate lunch. From what I gathered from his very vague descriptions of the meetings, Things were not going well between him and the German Alpha. Adam also told me that Jace had questioned Tyler and assured him Tyler hadn't told Alpha Superior Schneider anything. We ate quickly, as Adam's next meeting started soon after that. He assured me he would see me before that night before walking back to his office. On my way back to Adam's room, I saw Vega and her mom in the hallway talking. It looked to be a deep conversation, so I didn't interrupt them. I kept walking before running into you. Literally. As I rounded a corner. Sorry, she said laughing. I was just looking for you actually. What's up? I asked her. I wanted to know when you wanted to start getting things ready for the birthday party you mentioned. Oh, right. Come with me and we can go ahead and get started. I led her back to Adam's room so I could get the list of potential party themes and things we would need that I had written out the day before. I was thinking we could do something down in the basketball court, I said, opening the bedroom door. The boys love basketball. I stopped as I laid eyes on the bouquet of flowers that sat in a vase on the table beside the couch. Are those from Adam? You asked, noticing what I was looking at. I shook my head as my stomach dropped. Adam knew my favorite flowers were blue peonies. These were red tulips. Chapter 25. In Alpha's distrust, who sent the damn flowers? Adam was furious. Jace was annoyed. And I was scared out of my mind. The youth sat beside me at the conference table and Jace stood on the other side of the room as Adam paced around it. The guard said they didn't see anyone enter the room. Whoever did it came in through the balcony doors. Jace said, "Sorry about your house." You whispered to me. She pushed the pictures of my old home in flames towards the center of the table. I assured her. I upgraded anyways. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jace said to Adam. Adam stopped pacing and glared at him. You think it's a coincidence? He asked incredulously. These flowers are not in season, so someone had to put a lot of effort into getting them here. They're the exact same color as the ones in the photo, and there's 7 of them just like in the photo. It's too much to be a coincidence. Liu said, agreeing with Adam. She didn't seem to notice the glare that Jay shot her. But I did. Can we please focus? Narrowing my eyes at him. If it isn't a coincidence, that means we have a lot of theorizing to do. Adam placed his hands firmly on the top of the seat across from me. I agree. We all thought about this for a few moments before Lee spoke up. Do tulips have any significance in your family? I shook my head. My mom's favorites are sunflowers. My dad, on the other hand, I don't think he cares for anything living, so I wouldn't say he has a favorite kind of flower. What about the color red? Jace asked. I shook my head and Adam sighed heavily. We'll keep thinking on it. I want everyone to be cautious of anyone acting suspicious. It would have to have been someone outside of the meetings. To my agent extraordinaire, Myron Noben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. How do you mean? You were in a meeting with all of these people when I went back to the room. The person who put them, there must have gone during that time, when no one would have been walking the halls. You shook her head. No, because they were on a lunch break. However, if it was one of the alphas or betas, I doubt any of them would have had the guts to do it themselves. Even if we catch the person who put them there, we might not find out who wanted them there. Adam nodded in agreement. Let's call it a night. But keep thinking on this. Let me know if you to come up with something or if you find anything new. It was late. We had all met right after dinner that night because it was the first time Adam or Jace would have been able to meet due to the meetings they'd been in all day. Liu and I had managed to keep the flowers under wraps throughout the day, only telling Jace and Adam that evening. Dinner was awkward. I avoided Diedrich like a disease and I was wary of everyone. I knew the possibility was great that I was standing in close quarters with the person who had put the tulips in Adam's room. I also knew it was a possibility that I was sleeping under the same roof as the person who likely had my house set on fire and who knew where my parents were. It was weird to think that the two instances could be connected. It was even more horrifying, however, that the thing connecting the two instances was me and 7 red tulips. I didn't know of anyone in that castle that cared so little for me to go through the trouble of setting my house on fire, planting 7 tulips in the mulch. and then putting tulips in Adam's room to scare me. It was seemingly pointless, but it sent chills down my spine nonetheless. Adam and I left 𝐊𝐲𝐽 in the conference room and went back up to his bedroom. Once there, I watched him as he took the vase of tulips, opened the balcony doors, and threw them off the side of the ledge. I was halfway thankful for this act of recklessness, because it meant I didn't have to look at them any longer. Walking into the bathroom, I shut the door behind me and sighed. I walked over to the bathtub and turned on the hot water. Stripping out of my dress, I sat down in the bath and sighed. As the tub was filling up, I poured in the bubble bath and lay back to relax. I could feel my body slowly beginning to settle down, but my head was still spinning and turning over the situation. I was so overwhelmed that when I started to cry, I wasn't in the least bit surprised by the tears. I just held my hand over my mouth, trying to be quiet. The last thing I wanted was for Adam to hear me and try to come in. I didn't want to be comforted or to be told everything was going to be fine. I wasn't an idiot. I knew everything wasn't fine. I wanted to find my family and to be left alone by whoever was trying to mess with me. I wanted to fall in love with Adam like a normal person and not have to worry about the drama that surrounded me. I sat in the bath until the water turned cold and my tears had dried up. It wouldn't have surprised me to walk out of the bathroom and see Adam in the bed already asleep. It was past midnight and we were both mentally drained. However, when I came out of the bathroom, Adam was sitting on the couch, staring off into space. When he heard me, he looked over and gave me a tired smile. Feeling better, he asked me. I nodded at him. I nodded to the wardrobe to get out something to sleep in. I changed and put the towel back into the bathroom as Adam walked in behind me and started the shower. Undoing the bed, I slid underneath the covers and closed my eyes. A few minutes later, Adam came out of the bathroom. "Let's switch sides," he suggested, walking to my side of the bed. "Why?" "Because I want to be near the balcony doors," I groaned, having already gotten the sheets worn on my side. Adam laughed at this and put his arms under me and lifted me up to set me on his side of the bed. After he had done so, he climbed in the bed and pulled the covers over the both of us. Adam found my hand underneath the sheets and entangled his fingers with mine. He wrapped his arms around me and pulled my body against his chest. "Get some sleep." "I can't." Despite how tired I was, my mind was still reeling. "I'll find whoever did this," he promised me. "Go to sleep." After a few minutes had passed, I felt my mind slowly start to ease and, in the comfort of his arms, I finally fell asleep. Adam was still in bed with me when I woke up the next morning. I could hear his heavy breathing as I pulled his arms from around my waist. This was easier said than done. The man had a grip that would rival a toddler on their father's leg. I looked at the clock and noticed it was still early in the morning. Adam's meetings wouldn't begin for a few more hours. Looking at him, I could tell he had gotten little sleep last night. He had dark circles around his eyes. He was in such an exhaustive state of sleep. He was nearly snoring. I felt a pang of guilt in my chest. I couldn't imagine the stress this probably put him under. He had so much to deal with already with the centennial and you upon the line. The added stress of the tulip's arrival was just the cherry on top. I got out of the bed quietly and changed into comfortable clothes before brushing my teeth. After doing so, I called and asked for breakfast to be sent up to the room. I had no sooner pulled the cart of food into the room when Adam sat up in the bed, quickly hearing the door shut. He looked around before relaxing when he saw me pouring milk into my cereal. "Why are you awake this early?" His voice was deep and husky from sleep. I couldn't sleep. "Want breakfast?" He got out of the bed. "I'm going to shower first." Adam went into the bathroom and showered. He changed into slacks and a button, down and put on a tie to cover the now purple bruise on his neck. I had finished my cereal by the time he sat down and poured cereal into his own bowl. "I don't want you to stay in here by yourself today," Adam said. My eyebrows furrowed. "Why?" "It's not you that I don't trust," Adam said, assuring lie. "It's everyone else in this bloody castle that I worry about." "What other thing?" "𝐾𝐥𝐻 𝐑𝐞𝐝 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. Don't talk to Jace about anything else. Why? I trust Dietrich Schneider with my life quicker than I would Jace. And I think Jace knows that. He was all too quick to try and put the blame on the Germans last night. And you don't think it was them? Adam shook his head. Why, he smiled. I can't tell you just yet. But you'll know soon enough. Why won't he tell me? So why do you think Jace has something to do with it? He shook his head. I'm not sure he does. But don't you think it's weird that we were the only 3 people who knew about those tulips and now they've shown up here? In this castle, thousands of miles away from your house. I nodded. I see your point. He put his hand on my thigh. I don't mean to worry you, Evelyn. Just be careful. You're smart, so I know you will be. He finished eating and left for his meetings. As I watched him walk out the bedroom door, I couldn't help but worry. If an alpha can't trust his beta, who can he trust? Later that day, I ran into you, who told me Jace had expedited the search for my dad. And my mom. I asked her. She faltered. Well, Jace seems to think that your dad might have something to do with the tulips. I'm sure we'll find your mom if she's with your dad. He said. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. She's the one I want to find. I wanted to say, I don't give a rat's ass about my dad. How are you doing? But you ask me, are you still shaken up from yesterday? I shook my head. I'm more exhausted and ready for this all to end. We continued to walk down the hallway, into an empty sitting room. Can I ask you a favor? I asked her. She nodded. Anything. Have you ever shifted? You nodded slowly. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. I took a deep breath. Do you think you'd show me how? You've never shifted? She asked me incredulously. I shook my head, feeling slightly embarrassed. Yeah, of course I can show you. I just can't believe you've never shifted. I mean, my parents didn't care enough to show me how to. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Argy told me it hurt like hell, which is another reason I've never shifted. I guess. It does hurt the first time, she said honestly, but after you get used to it, it's just like popping knuckles. I cringed and she laughed. We can go down to the gym tomorrow sometime and I'll show you. 𝐶𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. There's a gym in this castle. Why wouldn't there be? Was this what you were going to ask me about at the arrival gala the other night? I was hoping she had forgotten about that. I thought as I shook my head. What were you going to ask me then? 𝐶𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. I was going to ask you about Jace, I said honestly. I saw her gulp and her whole demeanor changed. I'm sorry. I apologized. I knew that was going to cross a line. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. You took a deep breath. No, it's fine. I don't talk about it a lot. What do you want to know? Why did he reject you? I mean, you're smart and you're gorgeous. I don't understand why. She shrugged, looking down at her hands. My parents seem to think I've dishonored my family, especially my dad. That's why I have a job here at the palace. My dad seems to think I'll win him back someday. I have to wear makeup to work and I have to talk to him. Isn't it painful? 𝐶𝐿𝐴 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I asked her to have to see him every day. You took a deep breath. I've gotten used to it. It's been almost 2 years now. But some days are harder than others. Sometimes he'll ask me how I'm doing or he'll come over to my house for dinner. It delights my parents. But it's hard when he leaves and doesn't speak to me for a few days after. My eyebrows furrowed. Do you think he's just scared of the commitment? Maybe. I know he's had girlfriends, but they never last long at all. In a twisted way. It makes me happy, she said, smiling. I laughed at this. I hope you work things out. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐙. He's a lot of growing up to do. But maybe one day. I looked up at the clock. Adam would be out of his meeting in a few minutes. I think I'm going to go and start getting ready for dinner tonight. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐀𝐻. began to walk back up to Adam's bedroom. Jace is such an ass. Why would he reject that poor girl and then let her on like that? She clearly still loved him. I saw the way she looked at him and look on her face when I told her that I hoped it worked out. I had lied when I said that. He didn't deserve her. The problem was that she would never realize it. I had just made it back to Adam's room and had begun to look through dresses when he came into the room. You're not going tonight, he said firmly. His attitude caught me off guard. Why is that? Not amused. He said nothing, only pointed out the window at the sunset. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐿. I couldn't tell why the sunset was significant. But then I saw the full moon. Shit. Chapter 26 His thoughts Adam's POV. I could hardly keep my bloody eyes open the next morning. Staying in the guest bedroom while the love of my life was suffering from the pain of heat in the next room over had a way of keeping the thought of sleep distant. Her stubbornness to wait until we married irritated me beyond belief. But I wasn't going to change her mind. I'd already tried and my efforts proved unsuccessful. However, that didn't stop the thought of strangling the Chandler woman for making her take that bloody vow from becoming a regularly occurring thought in my mind. At times throughout the night, I felt the pull of my wolf. It wasn't concerned about the respect that Evelyn deserved in her decision. All it knew was that she was in pain and I was perfectly capable of stopping it. These low points in the night were the hardest. I didn't like fighting myself. I had given in to the pull of my wolf one too many times in my life and I was paying for not disciplining myself enough. I needed Evelyn, but I also needed to get a grip on myself. I had never been so close to losing myself as I had been the previous night. When she grabbed my arm and kissed my lips, I could physically feel my resolve leaving my body. I was proud of the mark she had left on my neck, however embarrassed she might have been by it. It meant she wanted me too, and that was satisfying enough for now. Covering the mark was a pain in the arse. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I felt as though I was being strangled by the tie around my neck. Jace noticed how much I had tugged and pulled at the bloody thing. I only hoped no one else in the conference room did. I sat at the head of the table. Jace sat to my right and General W. Anshan to my left. Alpha Superior 𝐊𝐲𝐬 was speaking and had been for the past few minutes about the problems his pack was having with rogues. The only problem I could see was how long-winded he was. If you placed a sanction against housing rogues on your land, you wouldn't have this problem. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Interrupting him. NW nodded in agreement. We believe that everyone should have shelter. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻 protested. I cannot force my people to turn others away. I shrugged inferently. I knew your Pandasia wouldn't stand for the reckless abandonment of rogues that Africa did. Then your problem of rogues will remain an issue until a problem as well. I said, pointing between Alpha Chen and Alpha Schneider. Get your problem under control. Alpha Chen said, narrowing his eyes at 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻, or we will control it for you. Alpha Schneider finished. 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐻 leaned back in his chair, finally at a loss for words. I saw Jace look down at his phone that sat in the palm of his hand, and I took a deep breath before kicking him under the table. He knew they weren't allowed in the room. He said nothing as he handed the phone to me under the table, and I looked at the screen. I couldn't help but growl at the message display on the screen. The disrespect of these people baffled me. I stood up in my chair, interrupting Alpha Schneider's statement. "Which one of you sent the letter?" Everyone went silent, feeling my patience grow thin. I growled and repeated myself. "Who sent the letter?" "I'm afraid I don't know what you are referring to," Alpha Chen said. I leaned forward and placed my hands on the table, looking them all in the eye. Someone forged a letter with my signature on it, stating that a last-minute invitation to the gala tonight was to be extended to an individual who was unnamed in the letter. It was placed by a maid who works on the Alpha Superior's chamber floors that you're all staying into the outgoing mailbox this morning. I tried to register the reaction on each of their faces, but they were smart enough to remain stoic. "Now," I said, prompting the conversation along, "I can ask the maid whose room from whence it came and she will tell me. But I'd like to extend the opportunity for whomever had the letter sent to confess now, before I find out for myself." The room was in dead silence, and it stayed that way for a few minutes. I, however, wasn't one to succumb to awkward silence. I would wait as long as I needed for an answer. "It was me." 𝐿 Schneider spoke. Of all the people in the room, it was not the quiet, timid and submissive son of Alpha Schneider that I expected to speak. "Would you mind explaining why?" I asked him. His father glared at him and the boy gulped. "I met a girl when we pulled into the village square on our way in on Sunday. I wanted to invite her to the gala. The invitation was unnamed. To my 𝐴𝐴𝐺𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐇. I don't know her name, sir, but somehow you believe that sending a letter out, unaddressed, it would, by some amount of sorcery, find its way to her." Barrett remained silent. His father asked him. "She works in the postal office. I knew she would receive the letter." My eyes narrowed at him. "I would like to ask that we adjourn for lunch," Alpha Schneider requested. "Fine. To my 𝐴𝐴𝐺𝐸 𝐊𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐸𝐿𝐢𝐺𝐠𝐀. Not taking my eyes off the Schneider boy, who was now staring at the tabletop in shame. Everyone began to clear the room and I stopped Jace from walking out and following them. Once everyone had left, I turned to him. "Find out who the intended recipient of that letter really was," I stated firmly. Jace nodded. I knew the German boy had lied. The only post office in town was run by a widower and his 3 sons. There were no women working in that office. But now I knew who had intended to send that letter. Barrett's pathetic excuse was one that was made up on the spot to cover the tracks of the one who had really sent it, his father. I couldn't help my smile as Jace left the room. "Europe would be mine by the end of the week." I was sure of this. Schneider had screwed up and I'd planned on taking full advantage of it. It was just a matter of time before I was given the go. Ahead and Schneider wouldn't know what hit him. I left the conference room and walked to my office. I would have much rather had eaten lunch with my Evelyn, but I had more planning to do that wouldn't be able to wait. A few minutes went by before I heard Jace's footfalls in the hallway. I looked up to see him enter into the office. "You found out who the letter was going to be sent to?" I guessed. He shook his head and I narrowed my eyes at him. "Why are you here then? You've been trying to get in touch with me." "She found Evelyn passed out in your room this morning. I felt the air leave my lungs. Is she all right?" Standing up quickly, Jace nodded. "They think so. They've been trying to run tests all morning, but she's not cooperating. They tried to run tests without my consent. Blood boiling. You restricted all access to the offices," he reminded me. "No one could get in touch with you." I felt my jaw clench as I walked around Jace and began to hurry towards the hospital ward. I could hear him walking behind me, but I paid him no mind. Once in the ward, I looked at the nurse who was walking through the hallway. She immediately bowed at the sight of me. "Where's she?" My tone was firm and this clearly intimidated her. She gulped and pointed to the last room on the right at the end of the hallway. As I approached, I could hear Evelyn's voice. "Stop. Don't touch me." I entered into the room and everyone froze, except for Evelyn, who ripped her arm from the grasp of Drive. 𝐶USAK. What is going on? My eyes narrowed in on Drive. 𝐶USAK, who began to explain. She had a heat stroke. Your Highness, she's extremely dehydrated and we need to cool her nervous system. I don't want a needle in my arm. Evelyn protested, standing up from the bed. I'm fine. Sit down. I commanded her. Her eyes widened at my tone and she sat back down on the bed reluctantly. Now, I said, you're going to sit there and let Drive. 𝐶USAK do exactly what he needs to do to help you get better, and you can start by giving him your bloody arm. Damn. I heard Vega whisper under her breath, Mrs. Chandler, who sat next to her, elbowed her in the ribs. I saw Evelyn's jaw clench as she looked at me defiantly. Please don't argue with me. I sighed in relief as she held out her arm. My fist clenched as I saw her flinch at the pain caused by the needle breaking through the skin. This is for her well-being, I reminded myself. This will help with the dehydration, Drive. 𝐶USAK assured her. Keep drinking the ice water and put this thermometer in your mouth. Your temperature needs to come down, so keep the cold compresses under your arms and on your neck. He went over to the cabinet and pulled out a hospital gown. When I leave, strip completely and put this on. It will help you cool down quicker, he instructed. She cringed as she took the gown from him. Drive. 𝐶USAK turned to me. Can I speak with you outside for a moment? He asked me. I nodded and followed him out into the hallway. She cannot go through heat again, he warned me. I raised an eyebrow at the boldness with which he spoke. Her nervous system overheated to the point her body's cooling mechanisms couldn't bring the temperature down. If Ms. W. Archen had not found her when she did, there's a good chance she could have had seizures or even slipped into a coma. I ran my hand across my jaw in frustration. Mrs. Chandler explained your unique situation to me. He continued. I realize that is a private matter between the two of you. But, as your residential physician, I am strongly advising you to not allow her to slip into heat again. Her body will not be able to handle it, and there's no telling what could happen if she does. I nodded slowly. I'll come back to check on her in a while, but I'll be down the hall with Mr. Chandler if you need anything, he informed me. Thank you. He nodded and turned to walk down the hallway. I groaned in frustration and punched the wall. Jace walked out of the room as I did so, and eyed the hole I left in the concrete. Send someone to fix that, I instructed him, walking into the room. Can Evelyn and I have the room? Please, Mrs. Chandler. Vega. 𝐿𝐢 and the nurse cleared out quickly and I shut and locked the door behind them. I'm fine, she assured me quickly. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Yes, I'm sure. I have passed out for the fun of it a few times myself, I said sarcastically. Evelyn made no effort to conceal her eye roll. A few weeks ago, I would have taken her sass to mean disrespect. However, I had come to love the fact that she was not scared of me, or was she scared to let me know where she stood on a subject. She had made that abundantly clear. I walked over to her and took the hospital gown from her hands and began to untie it in the back. Strip, I instructed her. She turned her nose up at the idea, angering me slightly. I pulled her off the bed by her arm and stood her in front of me. I grabbed the hem of her shirt and she slapped my hand away. Fine. I'll do it myself. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐿, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Turn around. I handed her the gown and turned my back to her. I wondered briefly what her reaction would be if I turned around suddenly, and I resisted the urge to chuckle. She was bashful, which I found adorable at times. However, there were other times, like when I found her stash of lingerie hidden in the bottom of her drawer, that it was maddening. I waited patiently for her to finish changing. I turned around only when I heard her sit down on the cot. She was folding her clothes beside her and grabbed a cloth and ran it under the cold tap before wringing it out and placing it against her neck. I apologize for not checking on you when I went into the room this morning to shower and change. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴 𝐿𝐿, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I couldn't believe I had been so stupid to not have made sure she was okay when I entered the room that morning. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐤𝐬𝐷𝐿𝐤, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐂𝐮𝐧𝐬 enthusiasm. I had heard her whimpers and cries of pain all night. I had even stood outside her door at one point, conflicted on whether to go inside. I had chosen not to, and I was regretting the decision. A bemused look crossed her face. "It's not your fault," I said with certainty. "I should never have let you go into heat in the first place. I should have married you the moment you told me you wanted to wait. I could have prevented this, and I'm sorry for not doing so." Evelyn sighed. "I'm not letting you take responsibility for my stubbornness," she said firmly. "It was my decision, and I will deal with the consequences of it." My jaw clenched as I took her face in my hands and made her look at me. "You will not go into heat again," I assured her. I saw her gulp before she looked over my shoulder at the clock hanging on the wall behind me. "Your lunch break is over," she informed me. I let go of her and sighed. "I can't leave her." "Go," she said. "I'll be fine. If anything is the matter, you send you to find me, and I'll come straight away," I said firmly. She rolled her eyes. "But I'm not staying here overnight. You'll stay here as long as you need to." She smirked, hearing this. "We'll see about that." Chapter 27. Stubborn shifter Adams P. Overby, she was right. I didn't make her stay in that foul, smelling hospital room that night. It was partly for her sake, but mostly for mine. I hadn't had a restful night's sleep in a while, and I knew I wouldn't sleep if she was several floors down alone by herself in a hospital cot. I did take precautionary measures. However, a glass of water was beside her on the bedside table if she needed it, and I woke up nearly every hour to make sure her fever wasn't coming back. About the fourth time I did so, I began to get frustrated with myself. I had never been so concerned with anyone other than myself before. Evelyn had a way of keeping me on my toes. I found myself doing things just to please or impress her. She was slowly becoming someone I looked to for affirmation, which frightened me more than I cared to express as someone who had always been self-sufficient. I couldn't wait for the day that she fully stepped into her role as my Luna. I already knew she would be phenomenal at it. But, with the way things were with Europe and all the changes I knew would soon be coming, I couldn't expect her to step up now. I worried what the stress would do to her, seeing as she was already overwhelmed by the disappearance of her mother and father. I was not so worried by their desertion. I hated her father, and I had to fight everything inside me the day I brought her home to keep myself from ripping him to shreds. He wouldn't be so lucky the next time I got my hands on him. It kept me awake at night to think about all the stories she had yet to tell me, all the pain he had caused her to suffer through. It could make my blood boil just thinking about it. I felt Evelyn's turn next to me, and she turned over to lay her head against my chest. I reached my arm around her and smiled as I imagined the blush that would spread across her cheeks if she were to wake up and see what she had done. It amazed me the power that a woman who was nearly half my size had over me. By the feeling in my chest, I knew that was power I had lost and would never earn back from her. I held her in my arms for the rest of the night, finally falling asleep myself a few hours later. When I woke up and got up to get ready for that day's meetings, it was harder to leave her than it had been the day before. I made sure the balcony doors were securely locked before leaving the bedroom quietly. I got to my office early that morning to look over a few things before the first meeting began. I glanced over security footage from the night before. Evelyn didn't know this, but I had cameras put on the outside of the balcony, outside of our bedroom door, and everywhere on the floor with the guest suits after the arrival of the tulips. I wasn't going to take any chances. If anything else happened, I didn't want to take someone's word for it. I wanted to know about it myself. I looked over my schedule for the day and called in one of the guards outside my door to have him tell someone to send for Evelyn at lunch. I was looking over my notes for the meetings when I heard Jace's footsteps in the hallway. I looked up just as he walked in to see a frustrated look on his face. I looked into the letter. He explained. The postmaster said, but a man came in yesterday to get the letter and was apparently irate when he was told they hadn't received a letter with your insignia on it. Who was it? None of them had ever seen him before. Did you get the security footage? It was conveniently broken the night before, he said sarcastically. I was beginning to get frustrated. Well, did you get a description? Jace handed me a sheet of paper with physical descriptions listed on it. Postmaster said he was abnormally tall, had dark hair, fair skin, high cheekbones, and not an ounce of muscle on his body. Jace said he was wearing a long, black coat and a silver signet ring on his index finger. That could be anyone. Postmaster said he didn't recognize him. Jace shook his head. He was certain he had never seen him before. I ran my hand across my jaw. That's something to start with. Check with all the inns and see if anyone has checked in with that description. I also want all flight plans from the past month on my desk by lunch. Flight plans. I'm assuming he didn't walk thousands of miles through frozen lands and ice. Jace nodded. How are we doing on the search for Evelyn's parents? I asked him. As far as we can tell, they left and didn't look back. There was something weird. We found out though. I looked up at him expectantly. Her mom hasn't worked in years. Apparently, she went through some kind of extensive medical treatment for a while. No one in the town had seen her mom since then. We even talked to a few people who thought they had divorced and she'd moved away. Some even thought she had died. I thought about this for a moment. Here's where it gets weird. He continued. All of her medical bills were paid in full while she was still in the hospital, and they never missed payments on a single bill they owed. The thing is, I thought it was initially because her dad was a lawyer, but he worked for a private firm that was about to go out of business. He was barely making enough each month for their groceries and car payments. So where was the money coming from? I've yet to trace it. But answer me this. Why would a couple who was struggling financially watch their house burn down to the ground and not wait around to get the insurance claim? The arson report was positive. Someone set the house on fire. I reminded him. Yes, he agreed. But there was no one in the house. I think they set the house on fire and they're running. You think they fled? I asked him. Found who? Your guess is good as mine. I'll keep looking into it. He turned and left the room as I pondered over the thought. Evelyn had more skeletons in the closet than I initially thought. Evelyn's key. When I woke up the next morning, Adam was gone and my throat was scratchy. I reached over and took 2 long gulps of water from the glass that Adam had placed on my nightstand before looking over at the clock. Deciding I had slept in long enough already, I got out of the bed and began to get ready for the day. Just as I slipped my socks on my feet, I heard a knock on the door. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't slightly disappointed it was Liu and not Adam, despite knowing Adam wouldn't have knocked. Are you feeling up to shifting today? She asked me. 𝐶𝐿 extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐽. 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐽. You put a hand on my shoulder reassuringly. You'll be fine. I shook my head. Let's just get this over with. I followed her down the stairs to the gym. It was a wide, open space with floor mats. A punching bag. 𝐶𝐿 extraordinaire, 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐻 𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐽. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. Weight sets and treadmills all placed strategically around the room. The thought of working out made me sick, but I was thankful there was no one else in the room with us. There's no blood involved, right? I asked her warily. I noticed her try to suppress a smile as she led me over to the mats. There's no blood. We got up onto the mats and she instructed me to sit. I cannot believe I'm about to do this. Take a deep breath, she said, sitting down in front of me. Try to relax. What is this? Yoga. She peeked and I opened to glare at me. I sighed, closing my eyes and taking a deep breath. Now, she said, try to imagine yourself as a wolf. Try to picture yourself with paws and fur. I cringed. That's not a happy picture. She groaned. This is ridiculous. I said, exasperated lie. I cannot believe I'm doing this. It's so primitive. I feel like Bruce Banner about to turn into the Hulk. She wasn't amused. Do you want to do this? Or not? Fine, I muttered. But I don't appreciate the sass. We restarted the deep breathing and relaxing process again. As I took my second breath, I felt it. I felt this part of me stir. It was like I had jumped into a pool of freezing water. Whatever it was, it scared me. I stiffened up and gasped. Ugh, you messed it up. That was it. You groaned. That totally just freaked me out. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐷𝐞𝐝. Feeling like I was about to have a panic attack. You're fine, she assured me. Now let's do it again. But no backing out this time. It took me a few moments to finally gather my bearings before I closed my eyes again. It came sooner that time than it had before. I felt it quicker and it was far more intense. I felt like I was on some type of psychedelic drug with the way my mind started to swirl. I tried my hardest to imagine my wolf. What it looked like. How soft the fur was. It was 𝐶𝐳 white at first, but then I saw a certain beauty in it. Suddenly I felt my shoulder pop out of place. I let out a scream of pain as my hip became dislocated. I can't do this, I gasped, falling backwards on the mat. 𝐿𝐢 immediately opened her eyes and grabbed my arms. It's going to be fine. Just give it a few more minutes. All I heard for the next few minutes was my screams of pain and you trying to calm me down. Tears rolled down my face as the hot pain seared through my body. It made it worse to think that my bones were popping out of place and resetting in some construed position. I heard someone begin banging on the door. Shit. 𝐿𝐢 cursed under her breath. I groaned as I doubled over, feeling my jaw begin to lock up. You've got to hurry. If I had had the strength to open my eyes, I would have glared at her. Truth be told, I tried several times to back out of it, to try and stop it. But I had gone too far down the rabbit hole. I screamed as my back snapped in and the pain was gone. I was panting as I laid on the mat. Suddenly, I heard everything at once. I heard the air condition coming through the vents above us, the banging on the door and the shouts of the men outside it. I heard 𝐿𝐢's gasp. I opened my eyes to see particles of dust that floated around in the air in the fluorescent bright lights. The sharpness of my vision made my eyes hurt. I closed them and began to rub out the outside of my eyelids. Only problem was, I no longer had hands. I opened my eyes to see the brown fur. I immediately screamed at this, but it came out as a bark, which freaked me out even more. Chill out, I heard you say. I looked up at her and caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror behind her, and I began to stumble over towards it. Walking on for paws instead of to legs wasn't as easy a transition as everyone made it seem. I had brown fur with blonde mixed in around my face. It was shaggy and it looked nothing like I had imagined it would. My legs and haunches were longer than most wolves, but my legs were longer than most girls my age when I wasn't shifted. Besides that, the only semblance of myself that I saw in the mirror was my green eyes. You need to shift back, I heard you say. Her panicked voice echoed in my mind for a moment before I looked over to see that the men were attempting to break through the gym door. She must have locked it behind us when we came in. I looked at her and hoped she could see the panic in my eyes. We didn't discuss how to shift back. It was as if she read my mind. Do the same things, take a deep breath and relax. Try to picture you as yourself. I laid back down on the mat, trying to do as she said. A few seconds of sharp pain went through my body, causing me to yelp. When I opened my eyes again, I immediately saw my skin and my fingers. I also saw much more skin than I had before I shifted. My clothes had ripped during the shift and I immediately tried to cover myself as the door flew open off its hinges. Adam walked in with a furious expression and he immediately rushed over to me, yanking off his shirt and covering me with it. I did it, I said excitedly as he pulled my arms through the oversized holes of the dress shirt. I can see that. He turned to Jace who came in behind him, and to the other men who had been trying to break down the door beforehand. Get out, he said firmly. We all turned and left quickly. 𝐿𝐢 stood up as well. I'll discuss this with you later. Glaring at her, she nodded and left the room in a hurry. Adam turned back to me and I smiled. I did it. I shifted. You said that already, he said, pulling me to my feet. I felt my knees buckle under and his arm wrapped around me for support. You're going to be sore for the rest of the day and tomorrow. I noticed the angry expression on his face and frowned. Why are you mad? I thought you would have been happy that I shifted. Adam sighed. I am happy for you. But you didn't tell anyone. All of a sudden, I have two men running into my office on my lunch break telling me that their Luna is in the gym screaming and the bloody door is locked and no one can get in. I could have been doing sprints on the treadmill. 𝐿𝐷𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐸 𝐿𝐷𝐸 𝐿𝐷𝐸𝐷𝐸. Adam's face told me he wasn't amused. He glanced over my body. Does everything feel okay? Did everything go back into its place? He asked me. My bones are fine. 𝐿𝐷𝐷𝐸 𝐷𝐸. I had never felt better. I felt like I was breathing new air. I felt powerful. That wolf was mine. Why did you not think to pack a change of bloody clothes? Eyeing the shreds of fabric that had once been my leggings, socks, and sweater, it didn't occur to me. I said, honestly, but has it ever occurred to you that you say bloody a lot when you get mad? Adam rolled his eyes. Has it ever occurred to you that you're stubborn and you don't think through anything? He asked me. I winked. You love that about me.